So the ECLIPSE trial was what we call a screening population trial. So it was run in people who were average risk for getting colorectal cancer between the ages of 45 and 85. And the way the trial was run is that those people underwent the gold standard colon cancer screening test, which is colonoscopy. That has the most highly accurate test for screening for colorectal cancer and then also for colorectal polyps. And then that was compared to a blood test. So all those patients had a blood drawn at the time that they had the colonoscopy done. And then the blood test was used and assayed with this shield test that the company has developed. So the shield test was compared to colonoscopy. The test was run. We enrolled a little over 20,000 people. Ultimately, the study cohort included about 8,000 people, which is the number of people needed in order to determine the specificity and the sensitivity of the test in an average risk screening population. When we compared the results of the shield test to colonoscopy, sensitivity for colorectal cancer was 83%, and the specificity was just slightly shy of 90%. The sensitivity for advanced colon polyps was 13%, and the specificity was again around 90% or so. Those are really the key takeaway findings from the study. What's currently available for cancer screening varies from cancer to cancer. And if we look at colorectal cancer, there are currently 4 screening tests that are available. So, well, the one that's used the most in the United States is colonoscopy, but other tests, there's 2 stool-based tests. One's called fecal immunochemical test or FIT test, and the other one is the Cologuard test. And then the next option that we have is the shield test. There are other colon cancer screening methods that are available. They just don't tend to get used very much. There's one that's CT scan based called CT colonography. There's also a video capsule technology called the PillCam that can be used for screening for colon cancer. That again just doesn't get used very much. So really it's those 3 tests, and they vary quite a bit in terms of their performance. And when I say performance, what I really mean is sensitivity and specificity for colorectal cancer and also for colon polyps. So if we start with the most accurate test, which is colonoscopy, that test is in the mid 90% sensitivity and specificity for colorectal cancer. And that's for early stage colorectal cancer, as well as late stage colorectal cancer. And it also has a high sensitivity and specificity for the advanced polyps, which are important because those advanced polyps have about a 30% chance of becoming cancer within 5 to 10 years. So we definitely want to be able to find those and remove them before they start transforming into cancer. So the sensitivity and specificity of the colonoscopy for those advanced polyps is over 90%. If we compare that then to the stool-based tests, which are the next most accurate, the Cologuard test is more accurate than the FIT-based test. The Cologuard test is over 90% sensitive for colorectal cancer, and its specificity is a little bit shy of 90%. For those advanced polyps, that sensitivity is in the mid 40%, and the specificity again is close to 90%. The FIT test, which is the test that gets used more often, partly because it's been around a little bit longer and also because it's substantially less expensive than the Cologuard test. The Cologuard test, I think, retails around $700 and the FIT test retails around $50. So the FIT test has a sensitivity for colorectal cancer that's somewhere between 70 to mid 80%, and specificity is around 90%. For colorectal polyps, it's about 30% for those advanced polyps. Again, the specificity is close to that 90% range. So it's not quite as good as the Cologuard test. And then if we go to the next test available, this shield test, which was just FDA approved, its sensitivity for colorectal cancer is equivalent, a little bit better than the FIT test. It's around 83%, and then the specificity is again equivalent to the FIT test. but the detection of those advanced polyps is 13% compared to FIT being 30% and Cologuard being in the mid 40%. So those options are available, and what's interesting is, all right, so how do you decide which test to use? And that's really where my recommendation is that a discussion happen between the care provider and the patient, and that the performance of the test is laid out to the patient, and then also the other aspects that are important about the test, which is what's the if you want to call it a patient's journey, or what's the lived experience going to be like doing those different type of tests. Colonoscopy is the most accurate, but it's also logistically the most difficult one to do. Patients have to go on a special diet for a few days before the colonoscopy. They have to drink a fluid that cleans out the colon in order for us to be able to get a good look at the inside of the colon and find those polyps and find those cancers. Many people don't like to do the preparation. The other thing is that we do use sedation most commonly when colonoscopy gets done. So a patient has to have a person who can help drive them to the appointment and drive them home. They also have to be in a community where there are gastroenterologists available for doing screening, which isn't true for a lot of underserved populations in urban areas and also in rural communities. So those make it a little bit more difficult to do that colonoscopy, and that's where some of these other tests become options, because the stool test can be done at home. It's ordered, patient receives a kit, they do the test at home, then they have to either bring the test back to a laboratory or mail the test in. So it's non-invasive. They don't have to necessarily do anything with their diet. They don't have to take preparation. And then the blood test is the most convenient and most accessible, because that can be added on to any blood test that gets done during a healthcare encounter. And that doesn't require any preparation. And obviously doesn't require needing to get assistance for anyone to have that care. And so I think that then what happens is then patients have to prioritize the convenience and kind of accessibility of the test, given their life situation, against the accuracy of the test. And that's really important because what we know is that whether someone does cancer screening is determined by all those factors. And for some people, they're going to value the accuracy of the test more than the convenience of it. And for other people, they're going to value the convenience more than the accuracy. It's important to give people options, because if we know when we don't give people options, compliance with screening is what at its lowest. And that's led to a general recommendation that the most important thing about getting compliance higher is to give people options that have different factors, their strengths and weaknesses, so that they can choose the option that's the most suitable for them. What we know for colorectal cancer is currently compliance, if we determine compliance by whether a person at any point during the time when they should be getting screening has had a screening test done, the compliance is around 75% for colorectal cancer screening. That means 25% of people are not getting screened. If we actually look at it from a programmatic standpoint, which is the way I tend to think of screening, which is getting screenings done at the appropriate intervals and during the age when people should be getting screening done. So if we speak specifically to colorectal cancer, what that means is that between age of 45 and 75, that someone is getting screening done starting at the appropriate age, 45, and then getting done at the appropriate intervals. For colonoscopy, that's at a 10-year interval if someone doesn't have polyps. For the FIT test, that's every 1 to 2 year interval. For Cologuard, that's an every 3-year interval. And the Shield test is currently has been approved at an every 3-year interval. What we know is that people may be compliant with the first test, but the compliance with the second, third, fourth test goes down over time. And that if we look at it, screening compliance from a programmatic standpoint, the compliance is more around 40 to 50%. And that's the hope is that now that we have this blood-based test, that will lead to more people being compliant with screening who currently are not compliant.